6 months isn't a mistake, Lara. It's a choice. You chose him. Now I'm choosing me.
You can't be serious. We can work this out. It was just...
The kitchen smelled like burned coffee and broken promises when I walked through the door that Friday night. My wife Jennifer stood there with her arms crossed, wearing that look I'd learned to recognize over 8 years of marriage, the one that meant someone was about to get railroaded, and today that someone was me. "We need to talk, David," she said, not bothering with hello or how was your day, or even acknowledging that I'd just spent 10 hours troubleshooting network crashes for ungrateful corporate clients. I set down my laptop bag and loosened my tie. "About what?" "Talia needs help with the kids this weekend. Again." Of course she did. Jennifer's sister Talia had 3 children under 10 who could turn a pristine house into a disaster zone faster than a tornado. The woman treated motherhood like a part-time hobby, constantly dumping her responsibilities on others so she could maintain her social life. "Let me guess," I said, opening the refrigerator to grab a beer. "She's got another important night out planned?" Jennifer's jaw tightened. "Don't be like that. She's been through a lot since the divorce." "That was 2 years ago, Jen. At some point, she needs to figure out how to be a parent. They're family, David. This is what families do." I popped open the beer and took a long drink, buying myself time to think. Through the living room window, I could see Talia's minivan in our driveway. The woman had already dropped off her chaos brigade and disappeared, probably assuming I'd just roll over like I always did. "Where is she now?" I asked. "She had to run some errands." "Errands, right." I walked into the living room and surveyed the damage. 8-year-old Brandon was jumping on our couch with his shoes on. 6-year-old Emma had somehow gotten into Jennifer's makeup and was painting the coffee table with lipstick. 4-year-old Tyler was methodically pulling books off our shelves and dropping them on the floor. "Hey," I called out. "Cut it out, all of you." They ignored me completely, which wasn't surprising. In their world, I was just background noise, another adult who would clean up their messes without consequence. Jennifer appeared beside me. "They're just energetic. They're destructive, and their mother is taking advantage of us." "She's not taking advantage. She's asking for help." I turned to face my wife, really looking at her. When had she become this person? When had she started prioritizing her sister's convenience over our marriage, our home, our sanity? "This isn't help, Jen. This is enabling. Talia goes out every Friday and Saturday night because she knows we'll babysit. She's turned us into her free childcare service." "That's not true." "When's the last time she offered to pay us? When's the last time she even said thank you?" Jennifer's face flushed. "Money isn't everything, David." "No, but respect is. And she doesn't respect us. She doesn't respect our time, our space, or our marriage." As if summoned by our argument, Tyler chose that moment to knock over a lamp. It crashed to the floor, the ceramic base shattering into a dozen pieces. He looked at the destruction with mild interest, then wandered off to find something else to destroy. "That's it," I said. "I'm not doing this anymore." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm done. No more free babysitting, no more letting Talia treat our house like a daycare center, no more pretending this arrangement is fair or reasonable." Jennifer stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You don't get to make that decision unilaterally. Watch me. If you don't help with these kids, David, there's going to be a problem." "What kind of problem?" She met my eyes, and for a moment I saw something cold and calculating there. "The kind where you have to decide what's more important, your comfort or your marriage." The ultimatum hung in the air between us like smoke. I could hear the kids in the background continuing their systematic destruction of our home. I could smell Jennifer's perfume, the same scent she'd worn on our first date. I could feel 8 years of compromise and accommodation and swallowed frustration crystallizing into something harder. "You know what, Jen? You're absolutely right. I do have to decide what's more important." I walked to the front door and grabbed my keys from the hook. "Where are you going?" "Out. You wanted to help your sister, have fun, but I'm not going to be part of this circus anymore." "David, don't you dare walk out that door." I paused with my hand on the doorknob. "Or what? You'll threaten our marriage again? Too late. You already did that." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me, cutting off Jennifer's response. Through the window, I could see her standing in the hallway, her mouth open in shock. She'd expected me to cave, to apologize, to fall back into line like I always did. Not this time. I got in my car and drove away, leaving my wife to deal with her sister's children and her own choices. For the first time in years, I felt something I'd almost forgotten, the satisfaction of standing up for myself. I had no idea it was just the beginning. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I spent that night in a cheap motel on the edge of town, lying on scratchy sheets and staring at the water-stained ceiling. My phone buzzed constantly with calls and texts from Jennifer, but I ignored them all. I needed time to think, to figure out what came next. By morning, I had my answer. I checked out of the motel and drove to Murphy's Gym, a no-frills boxing club in the warehouse district where I'd been training twice a week for the past 3 years. It was early enough that the place was nearly empty, just me and a few other guys working out their frustrations on heavy bags. Coach Murphy was in his office, reviewing training schedules over coffee that could strip paint. "You look like hell, Caldwell," he said when I knocked on his doorframe. "Feel like it too." I slumped into the chair across from his desk. "Can I ask you something, Coach?" "Shoot." "What do you do when someone keeps pushing you around, taking advantage of your good nature?" Murphy leaned back in his chair, studying me with those sharp eyes that had seen everything in his 60-plus years. "Depends. We talking about someone at work? Home?" He nodded slowly. "That's trickier? But the principle's the same? You show them there are consequences for their actions. People only treat you like a doormat if you lie down and let them." "What kind of consequences?" "The kind that hit them where it hurts most. For some people, that's their wallet. For others, it's their reputation. You know your situation better than I do." I thought about Jennifer and Talia, about their obsession with social media and appearances. They spent hours crafting the perfect posts, cultivating their online images, building their social circles around shared grievances and manufactured drama. "Their reputation," I said. Murphy smiled. "Then you make sure everyone sees who they really are." I spent the rest of the weekend planning. I went back to my apartment, the one I'd kept even after Jennifer and I moved in together, just in case things didn't work out. It was small and sparse, but it was mine, and for the first time in months, I could think clearly. I pulled out my laptop and started researching. Social media algorithms, viral marketing techniques, digital forensics. My job in IT support had taught me more about technology than most people realized, and I'd always been good at seeing patterns, connections that others missed. By Sunday night, I had a strategy. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the public library. I needed to use computers that couldn't be traced back to me, and I needed to be thorough. I started with Jennifer's social media accounts. She was careless with her privacy settings, and it didn't take long to map out her entire social network, her friends, Talia's friends, their favorite hangouts, their weekend routines. I took screenshots of everything, building a comprehensive picture of their world. Next, I created several fake social media profiles using stock photos and generic names. I spent hours crafting believable backstories, adding friends, posting content. By the end of the week, I had a small army of fake accounts that looked completely legitimate. The beauty of social media was that people believed what they wanted to believe. If someone posted something that confirmed their existing biases or fed their appetite for drama, they rarely questioned the source. I was counting on that. My first target was Talia herself. I'd been watching her patterns for months, and she was predictable. Every Friday night, she dropped off her kids and disappeared until Sunday afternoon. She always posted about her adventures, the clubs, the parties, the men she met. She documented her entire irresponsible lifestyle for the world to see. What she didn't realize was that her ex-husband's lawyer was watching too. I'd done some digging and found out that Marcus, Talia's ex, had been trying to get more custody of the kids for months. The court had given Talia primary custody because she'd presented herself as the stable parent, the devoted mother who'd been wronged by her cheating husband. But the truth was more complicated. Marcus had cheated, yes, but Talia had been neglecting the kids long before their marriage fell apart. She just hid it better. I decided to help the truth come to light. Using one of my fake accounts, I started commenting on Talia's posts. Nothing obvious or confrontational, just innocent questions that highlighted the contradictions in her stories. "Wow, another night out. Who's watching the little ones? You're so lucky to have such flexible childcare. How do you manage it? The kids must miss you when you're out so much. How do you balance it all?" Other people started noticing. Friends began asking similar questions in the comments. Talia initially tried to deflect, claiming she only went out occasionally, that the kids were with family who loved spending time with them. But I had screenshots of her posts going back months, a pattern of constant partying, of palming off her responsibilities on others. I started sharing these screenshots anonymously with parenting groups and local community forums, always with concerned questions about a friend's situation. The response was swift and brutal. Comments poured in calling Talia selfish, irresponsible, unfit. The screenshots got shared and reshared, spreading through social networks like wildfire. Within a week, Marcus's lawyer had copies of everything. Within 2 weeks, he'd filed for emergency custody review. But that was just the opening move. Jennifer had been calling me constantly, leaving increasingly angry voicemails. She'd started telling people I was having a breakdown, that I'd abandoned her and the kids without explanation. She was painting herself as the victim, the long-suffering wife dealing with an unstable husband. I let her talk. Every lie she told, every exaggeration she made, every attempt to manipulate the narrative, I documented it all. I recorded phone calls, saved voicemails, took screenshots of her posts and texts. She was building my case for me. 2 weeks after I'd walked out, Jennifer's world started to crack. It began with a simple Facebook event invitation. VIP night at Pulse, the trendy downtown club where Jennifer and her friends liked to pretend they were still 25. The invitation looked completely legitimate, complete with official club graphics and a guest list full of local influencers and minor celebrities. The catch? The event was completely fake. I'd spent hours crafting the perfect trap. The invitation promised free drinks, VIP seating, and a chance to network with important people in the local social scene. For Jennifer and her status-obsessed friends, it was irresistible. They spent the entire week planning their outfits, posting about their excitement, building up the event as the social gathering of the month. Jennifer even bought a new dress, charged to our joint credit card naturally. Saturday night arrived, and they showed up at Pulse in their designer outfits and expensive shoes, only to find out that no such event existed. The club was having its regular Saturday night, nothing special, no VIP list, no free drinks. The humiliation was immediate and public. Other club-goers laughed as Jennifer and her friends argued with the bouncer, insisting they were supposed to be on some mysterious VIP list. Someone filmed the whole thing and posted it online with the caption, "When you fall," for a fake event. But that was just the distraction. While Jennifer was dealing with her social embarrassment, I was implementing the real plan. I'd hired a local college student, someone who needed extra money and didn't ask too many questions, to document what happened at our house when Talia dropped off her kids. The setup was simple. I'd given the student a key to our house and told her she was a backup babysitter, that she should arrive at 8 p.m. to help with the children. I'd also given her a hidden camera, disguised as a phone charger, and asked her to document any concerning behavior for insurance purposes. What she recorded was exactly what I'd expected. Talia had dropped off the kids at 6 p.m. and immediately left for her own night out. The children were hungry, dirty, and completely unsupervised. They tore through the house like a hurricane, breaking furniture, making messes, and generally acting like the undisciplined animals their mother had raised. By the time the babysitter arrived at 8, the house was a disaster zone. She spent the next 4 hours trying to contain the chaos, clean up the damage, and keep the children from seriously hurting themselves or destroying everything we owned. The footage was damning. 3 young children, left alone for hours, turning a home into a war zone while their mother partied and their aunt was off chasing fake VIP events. I edited the best moments into a 5-minute highlight reel and uploaded it to YouTube with the title, "When Parents Party: The Real Cost of Neglect." I shared it anonymously in local parenting groups, community forums, and social media pages. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, the video had hundreds of views and dozens of comments. Parents were outraged, child welfare advocates were calling for investigations, and local news stations were picking up the story. More importantly, Marcus's lawyer now had video evidence of neglect to present to the court. But the real masterpiece was yet to come. I'd been monitoring Jennifer's social media activity, watching her damage control efforts after the fake VIP event. She was trying to spin it as a misunderstanding, claiming someone had pranked her, playing the victim card as usual. So I decided to give her something real to be a victim about. Using my network of fake accounts, I started spreading a different story. Jennifer wasn't just an innocent victim of a prank. She was a neglectful wife who'd abandoned her responsibilities to chase social status. I shared carefully edited screenshots of her posts, highlighting her constant partying, her expensive purchases, her complaints about domestic life. I created a narrative where Jennifer was the villain, a selfish woman who forced her husband to babysit her sister's children while she lived it up with her friends, a woman who cared more about her image than her family. The story spread like wildfire through our social circles. Friends started questioning Jennifer's version of events. Neighbors began looking at her differently. Coworkers whispered behind her back. Jennifer tried to fight back, posting long explanations and defensive rants on social media. But the internet had already made up its mind, and her protests only made her look more guilty. By the end of the month, her social standing was in ruins. Talia was facing a custody battle, and I was sitting in my apartment, watching it all unfold from a safe distance. But I wasn't done yet. This was just the beginning. Jennifer had threatened my marriage to force me into compliance. She tried to make me choose between my self-respect and my relationship. Well, I'd made my choice, and now she was going to live with the consequences. The war had begun, and I was winning. Jennifer's counterattack came swift and vicious. I discovered it when I tried to access our joint bank account and found it frozen. She'd gone to the bank with some story about suspicious activity, claiming I was having a mental health crisis and making erratic financial decisions. When I called to straighten it out, the bank manager was apologetic but firm. "I'm sorry, Mr. Caldwell, but we have to take these concerns seriously. Your wife provided documentation of erratic behavior, and until we can verify your mental state—" "My mental state?" "She mentioned you'd been making threats, acting unpredictably. We just need some professional verification that you're competent to manage the account." I hung up, my hands shaking with rage. Jennifer had effectively locked me out of my own money, using mental health stigma as a weapon. It was brilliant, ruthless, and completely in character. But it was also a mistake. I spent the next week gathering evidence of Jennifer's real activities. Bank records showed expensive purchases at high-end stores, charges at exclusive restaurants, payments to personal trainers and beauty salons. While she was claiming financial hardship and concern about my spending, she was burning through money like it was confetti. More interesting were the charges I didn't recognize, or frequent payments to something called premium connections, which turned out to be a high-end dating service. My wife wasn't just neglecting our marriage, she was actively shopping for my replacement. I dug deeper, using my IT skills to recover deleted files from our shared computer. What I found was a treasure trove of infidelity, dozens of messages with men from the dating service, explicit photos, detailed plans for hookups and affairs. The most frequent correspondent was someone named Tyler Kane, a personal trainer at an upscale gym downtown. Their messages went back months, long before our recent fight. Jennifer had been cheating on me while simultaneously demanding I sacrifice my time and energy to help her sister. I printed everything: screenshots, bank records, dating profiles, explicit messages. I organized it all into a comprehensive file that told a clear story. Jennifer wasn't the victim of an unstable husband. She was a cheating wife who'd been planning her exit strategy while manipulating me into compliance. But instead of confronting her directly, I decided to let her hang herself. I created a fake profile on the same dating service Jennifer was using, complete with stolen photos of a male model and a carefully crafted personality designed to appeal to her specific tastes. Within days, Jake Morrison had matched with my wife and started a conversation. Jennifer took the bait immediately. She was eager, flirtatious, and surprisingly honest about her situation. She told Jake all about her controlling husband, her plans for divorce, her need for excitement and adventure. She also told him about Tyler, bragging about her ongoing affair and her plans to move in with him once the divorce was finalized. I recorded everything. Meanwhile, I started my own investigation into Tyler Kane. Social media stalking revealed a man obsessed with his image. Constant gym selfies, motivational quotes, and an obvious addiction to attention and validation. He was also married. Tyler's wife was a sweet-looking woman named Rebecca, who worked as a nurse at the local hospital. Her social media was full of loving posts about her husband, their future plans, their recent wedding anniversary. She had no idea her husband was sleeping with my wife. I decided she deserved to know. But first, I wanted to meet Tyler face to face. I signed up for a membership at his gym, timing my visits to coincide with his schedule. It didn't take long to arrange a chance encounter at the weight rack. Tyler was exactly what I'd expected, all muscle and no brain, the kind of guy who measured his worth in bench press numbers and Instagram likes. He was handsome in a generic way, with the kind of artificial charm that worked on women like Jennifer. "Spot me on this set?" he asked during our third encounter. "Sure thing." I stood behind him as he pressed 225 pounds, my hands ready to catch the bar if he faltered. It would have been so easy to let it drop, to watch him struggle under the weight. But that wasn't my style. Instead, I waited until he finished his set and sat up, breathing hard. "You know," I said conversationally, "I think you're sleeping with my wife." Tyler's face went white. "What?" "Jennifer Caldwell, blonde, about 5'6", works in marketing. You two have been meeting up for, 3 months now?" He started to stand, but I put a hand on his shoulder, keeping him seated. "Don't worry, I'm not here to cause a scene. I just wanted to meet the man who's been helping destroy my marriage." "Look, man, I didn't know that she was married, really, because she mentions me quite a bit in your text conversations. Complains about me constantly, actually." Tyler's eyes darted around the gym, looking for escape routes or witnesses. "How do you know about the texts? Let's just say my wife isn't as careful with her digital security as she thinks she is." I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot of one of their conversations. Tyler's face went from white to green as he read his own words back to himself. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You're going to end things with Jennifer, immediately, and you're going to tell your wife Rebecca about your affair before I do." "You can't what? Tell your wife that you're cheating on her? Watch me." I showed him another screenshot, this one of Rebecca's Facebook page. "She seems nice. Probably deserves better than a husband who sleeps around with married women." Tyler stood up abruptly, his hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might actually try to fight me, but then he looked around the gym, saw the other members watching our conversation with interest, and thought better of it. "This is harassment," he said. "No, this is consequences. Something you're apparently not familiar with." I walked away, leaving Tyler standing there with his mouth open and his world crumbling around him. 2 days later, Jennifer came home in tears. Tyler had dumped her via text message, claiming he needed to focus on his marriage. She had no idea I was behind his sudden change of heart, but her tears quickly turned to rage when she realized what Tyler's departure meant. She'd lost her safety net, her exit strategy, her plan for life after our marriage. She was trapped with me, at least temporarily, and she hated it. That's when she decided to escalate. Jennifer's final gambit was as desperate as it was vicious. I came home from work to find police cars in my driveway and officers waiting in my living room. Jennifer sat on the couch, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, playing the role of the frightened wife to perfection. "Mr. Caldwell," the older officer stood as I entered. "We need to talk." "About what?" "Your wife has filed a complaint alleging domestic threats and harassment." I looked at Jennifer, who refused to meet my eyes. "What kind of threats?" "She says you've been stalking her, following her to work, making threatening phone calls." "That's ridiculous." "She also mentioned you've been acting erratically, possibly having a mental health crisis." There it was again, the mental health angle. Jennifer was trying to paint me as unstable, dangerous, someone who couldn't be trusted or believed. "Officer," I said calmly, "I think there has been a misunderstanding." I walked to our home office and retrieved a folder from my desk. Inside were printed copies of everything: Jennifer's dating profiles, her messages with Tyler, bank records showing her excessive spending, documentation of her lies and manipulations. "Before you take my wife's claims at face value," I said, handing the folder to the officer, "you might want to see what she's been up to." The officer flipped through the papers, his expression growing more skeptical with each page. His partner looked over his shoulder, occasionally raising an eyebrow at particularly damning evidence. "Mrs. Caldwell," the older officer said finally, "these documents suggest you've been engaged in extramarital affairs and financial deception." Jennifer's composure cracked. "Those are fake. He's been stalking me, hacking my accounts." "Actually," I interrupted, "everything in that folder came from our shared computer and joint bank account, information I had every legal right to access." I pulled out my phone and showed them the app I'd been using to record all our conversations. "I've also been documenting every interaction we've had since this situation began, including the conversation where she threatened our marriage if I didn't comply with her demands." The officers exchanged glances. This wasn't the simple domestic dispute they'd been expecting. "Ma'am," the younger officer said, "making false police reports is a serious offense." Jennifer's face flushed red. "I wasn't making a false report. He's been what? Defending myself against your attempts to manipulate and control me?" I turned to the officers. "Gentlemen, my wife has been having an affair, lying about our finances, and using her sister's children as weapons in our relationship. When I finally stood up for myself, she decided to destroy me rather than face the consequences of her own actions." The older officer closed the folder and handed it back to me. "Mr. Caldwell, we're going to need you to come to the station and give a formal statement. Mrs. Caldwell, you too." "Why do I need to?" "Because if these documents are authentic, you may have committed several crimes: financial fraud, filing false police reports, possibly others." Jennifer's world was collapsing, and she knew it, but she had one more card to play. "Fine," she said, standing up with as much dignity as she could muster. "But I want everyone to know who David really is, what he's capable of." She pulled out her phone and started typing furiously. Within minutes, she'd posted a long, detailed Facebook post accusing me of stalking, harassment, and emotional abuse. She painted herself as a victim trying to escape a dangerous marriage, claiming she feared for her safety. It was her final attempt to control the narrative, to turn our social circle against me before the truth could come out. But I was ready for that too. Within an hour, I'd posted my own response. Not a defensive rant, but a calm, detailed explanation of the situation. I included selected screenshots of Jennifer's dating profiles, her messages planning affairs, her lies about our finances. I documented everything she'd done, every manipulation she'd attempted, every lie she'd told. I ended with a simple statement. I'm not the villain in this story. I'm just someone who finally decided to stop being a victim. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Friends who'd initially believed Jennifer's post began commenting with shock and disgust at the evidence I'd provided. People shared their own stories of Jennifer's manipulative behavior, incidents I'd never known about. The narrative flipped completely. Jennifer went from sympathetic victim to exposed manipulator in the span of a few hours. But the real victory came 3 days later. Marcus, Talia's ex-husband, was awarded emergency custody of their children. The judge cited the video evidence of neglect, Talia's documented partying lifestyle, and her inability to provide stable care for her children. Talia's world imploded overnight. Without the children to give her life structure and purpose, without the sympathy of being a struggling single mother, she was just another irresponsible adult facing the consequences of her choices. Jennifer lost her primary ally and her main justification for the demands that had started our war. Tyler's marriage also ended, though that was just collateral damage. Rebecca filed for divorce after seeing the evidence of his affairs, taking half his assets and his reputation with her. As for Jennifer and me, we never made it to the police station. She packed her bags and moved in with a friend, claiming she needed space to think. We both knew she was really looking for her next victim, her next source of support and validation. I filed for divorce the following week. The house felt different with Jennifer gone. Cleaner, quieter, more like home. I'd won the war, but the victory felt hollow. 8 years of marriage reduced to a pile of evidence and a collection of destroyed relationships. But as I sat in my living room, drinking a beer and watching the sunset through clean windows, I realized something important. For the first time in years, I wasn't angry. I wasn't frustrated or manipulated or taken advantage of. I was free. Jennifer had tried to break me, to force me into submission through threats and manipulation. Instead, she'd freed me from the prison of a toxic relationship. I raised my beer in a mock toast to the empty house. Thanks for the lesson, Jen. Next time I'll know better. The war was over, and I'd won more than just a victory. I'd won my life back.